One came in with an AK-47, another with a handgun by my head, and I immediately kind of braced. Remember, we're full of boxes here.
Mm-hmm.
I raise the window, it catches the barrel of both guns. I see the shooter trying to wiggle the rifle, and without notice, they open fire into the cabin, striking Agent Zapata multiple times, and then the fatal one in his leg. At one point, I grabbed the handgun. I don't know what I was trying to do, hold it, pull it, keep it from shooting. Had burned all the skin off of my index finger because it was very hot. And then they pulled the guns out. I raised the window and they just started spraying it with bullets on that side. I tell Agent Zapata, go, go. He yells out, I'm hit. I put the Suburban in drive. He puts his foot on the gas. I push his leg down there. We crashed the vehicle in front of us, trying to get back on the highway. Agent Zapata became unresponsive, and the Suburban really rolled from the right shoulder, passing into the highway into the median, and that's where it ended up. It was disabled at that point, flat tires, and they shot over many rounds. So one SUV leaves, then I see the second SUV leave, but it makes a U-turn, comes back, parks right in front of us, and they stare at me, and they stand right in front of the hood with AK-47s, and they open fire, trying to penetrate the glass. And I provided you with some pictures where, at that point, I just froze in the front seat. And then they stop firing. They get back in their SUV and take off. I made a frantic phone call. I didn't provide that call, but it's online. I could provide it for you. It's a frantic phone call that I made. I, for some reason, called the U.S. Embassy switchboard, and I basically said, "This is Victor Avila with ICE. We've been shot. We've been shot on the highway. Please send help." I didn't know exactly our location. Where we were. A lot of phone calls started happening. It went to from there to the regional security office where my wife was working. She was basically 5 feet away when the receptionist got the call. She didn't know what to do. She went down the hallway and said, Agent Avila's on the phone, has been shot. Well, my wife comes out of her office and says, what did you just say? Well, there's an Agent Avila on the phone that's been shot. So my wife goes into distress. Diplomatic security special agents get on the phone. ICE agents get on the phone. A lot of people on the phone. I eventually called the only person I could trust in Mexico at that point was the commander of our vetted unit, the head of our unit. He was the one that was able to deploy a helicopter. Kept us there for took 40 minutes. It's a long time.
Yeah, it's a long time. When were you shot? We saw the picture of the front window.
Yeah.
Had you been shot at that point?
I had been shot before. That window held. I got shot once in the chest and twice in my left leg. The bottom of my leg, I didn't even know until they put me in the helicopter and they told me I'd been shot in the bottom of my left leg. But obviously I could see the one here. Initially, when I got on the phone with the ICE agent, who's a friend of mine and ex-paramedic, he's the one that first told me to check myself physically because there was a lot of shrapnel and glass, and I had a lot of cuts and blood on my face. And I also had a lot of Hymas blood because I was trying to, attend to his wound. What those do is these armored vehicles, these windows, if you continue to shoot on that glass in the same spot, it'll eventually give way. And I think that's what they're trying to do. Inside, it bubbles in.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just so thankful that it held. But it's not until my friend actually told me to physically check myself that I saw the open wound in my chest and saw the blood coming down in my jeans. And then I saw my left leg, and I took my belt and used it as a tourniquet. There are many. So they shot, I don't know how many, over 100 here. And then, of course, I don't know how many in front of us when they did that U-turn.
Is everything here bulletproof? The metal and the windows?
Yes.
The whole car's bulletproof?
Yes, but to understand metal, I tell people all the time, it's like a waterproof shoes. Doesn't mean they're not going to get wet.
Yeah.
And so there was
a lot of... it and changes its trajectory.
It's a lot of rounds that actually made it into the SUV through crevices on the undercarriage and such.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't protect you 100%. Obviously, it protected me enough for me to be here to tell you the story.
And then they airlifted you out of there.
The Mexican Federal Police sent their helicopter. The nearest town was San Luis Potosí. the town by the city by the same name of the state. We had very good care, but I was very, very petrified, very scared because the cartels kill people at hospitals. I worked these cases when I was in
Right.
Mexico. I worked in Ciudad Juarez many times. They would
They
go
kill
to
you when you get to the hospital.
when they make sure that
Right.
they made it alive. And so I was very, very scared. They eventually sent special forces from the federal police to surround and that medical building. The whole hospital was under the control of the police at that point. And it took a long time. The shooting happened at 2:15 p.m. The first Americans arrived sometime after 7 p.m. Had really good care, medical care in Mexico. A lot of other things happened, but eventually they flew me out in the middle of the night. DEA let us borrow their plane, and they flew me to Houston.
So you were unprotected at the hospital for 5 hours?
For about an hour. The support came in about an hour after I arrived, and the 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 hospital staff didn't know that we were Americans. Obviously, the way they look, and I didn't want them to know that we were Americans. I didn't tell them my name. I refused any IV or any medication. They were doing sonograms. They were, they're cutting my shirt. They were doing all this treatment, but they didn't know who I was, and I wasn't about to tell them. I didn't tell them until those reinforced. You see, in Mexico, you don't call 911 and have the police show up. You have to call certain people you trust because the corruption runs rampant over there. So not until the trusted officials showed up that I was able to tell them who we were.
Did they ever find the people that did the shooting? What happened to those?
Sure did. The U.S. government did a fantastic job. HSI, FBI, and other law enforcement agencies did a great job in tracking these guys down. They were arrested. Out of the 8 shooters, they arrested 7. One was presumed dead. Then were extradited to the U.S. They were all facing the death penalty, but because of the treaty we have with Mexico, they take the death penalty off the table, and they were all looking at a minimum mandatory life in prison. So then we get into the criminal justice system, which I think we kind of are experiencing now. Well, we experienced it a long time ago because in 2017, we went to trial thinking that all of the defendants were going to go to trial. And my wife and I were surprised because 5 of them took a plea deal. And I said, okay, you see, I used to be a federal probation officer before I was an agent, so I understand the U.S. courts very well and the federal sentencing guidelines. And I couldn't understand if they're going to plead guilty, that was okay. I was okay with that, but it still called for the same sentence. Well, the federal government gave them what they call a 5K departure, meaning they departed from the minimum mandatory life sentence and sentenced them from 35 years down to 12 years for their cooperation. And I had never in my career ever seen that happen, from a life sentence to such a minimal time for killing a U.S. federal agent, but that's what it was. And so they pled guilty to murder, attempted murder of an internationally protected person, and weapons charges. So the 2 that didn't went to trial. We went to trial. They were found guilty, and they were sentenced to life imprisonment. 2 years after that, everybody's okay. They're in prison. They're serving the sentences. Well, the 2 that received the life sentences appealed their sentence. In 2019, they said that the murder statute used against them to convict them of the murder of Agent Zapata was invalid because the murder happened extraterritorially, meaning because it happened outside of the U.S. And the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals agreed with them and dismissed the murder charge. They dismissed it. And so I was here by my house. I was in the car when I got the call, and I started crying about it because I had to now notify the Zapata family. I was kind of the one that was kind of the intermediary, or, the connector there, and talking and sending messages back and forth, and let them know that there's no one in prison now for the murder of their son. They're still in custody from the other charges. So I reach out to our elected officials, congressmen, senators, and to fight this law. And it took us 2 years, but in November of 2021, President Biden signed the Jaime Zapata and Victor Avila Federal Officer and Employee Protection Act, meaning this will not happen to anyone else. It was basically one pager. I give a lot of credit to the Federal Law Enforcement Officers Association because they helped a lot with their presence on the Hill. And it wasn't retroactive to our case, but at least it protects those men and women who continue to serve abroad. And just last May, almost a year ago, we went back to have those two guys resentenced, and we begged the judge to resentence them back to life, and he did. And so those two that went to trial are in prison for life. The other five, one of them already has been released and deported.
Mm-hmm.
It's been over 12 years.
Wow. At least some effort was made. Is that cartel still in operation?
A great question, because they were kind of disbanded and dismantled, but they faction off to CDN, and their new name is Cartel del Noreste, or Cartel of the Northeast, which prominently works the Laredo, the Mexican side of Laredo, Texas, which is Nuevo Laredo. That's their area. They have other pockets here and there, but that's the control they have under. They're very big into Los Zetas. CDN are very, very violent. These are the ones that introduced decapitations and brutal killings in Mexico, kind of to show force and to show the other cartels by these methods of intimidation, terrorist type of activities, if you will. And so they continue. They're still there. They're still active. Some still use the old name of Los Zetas, but the new one of CDN is full in effect, not just in Mexico, but here as well.